So with that said, I'll pass it on to Mark Hansen on the podium team, who's our moderator, to lead the discussion.
Great, thank you. I'm going to just kick off with a brief presentation, and then we'll move to our panelists. So I'm going to quickly share my screen real quick. So today, of course, we want to talk about, from source to sold. I think when we think about adjusting to the new normal, this has become a reality for all of us, right? There is a lot that has changed. A lot of doors have had, a lot of stores have considered closing their doors, right? There are limitations placed on healthcare clinics, and a lot of impact has been made. And we've seen a number of businesses coming to Podium to figure out, how do we adjust? How do we maintain communication? How do we keep our leads and relationships kind of flowing? And I think it's a difficult time for everybody, and we're all in this together. But our consumers especially are scared to purchase, and they're dealing with maybe apprehension to make it to a physical location. And the thing that's exciting to me is it's not all doom and gloom. I think that right now is a great time for brands to really invest in the consumer experience, to really invest in brand building, and to really invest in making connections with customers, because even though they may not want to physically be in your location, they want to engage, right? They want to still keep the economy flowing. There's still needs out there, and I think right now is the right time to invest in that customer experience. And we know from the data that we've seen that customer experience is going to overtake price and product, and I think many of you have seen that even in your personal lives. When you think about an Amazon-like buying experience, or when we look at things like Uber has changed the game for me. Why would I ever call a cab again, right? I expect to be able to kind of like get a car sent to me through my phone wherever I'm at, right? So consumer experience is something that I think all of us as marketers and CX leaders and business leaders in general should be thinking about. And now is the time to really think about, how do we invest in that to maintain revenue and make sure that our brand is well positioned when we eventually come out of this COVID-19 situation. But what does a good customer experience look like? It is convenient, of course, frictionless, and efficient. When we think about convenience, customers and consumers, they want that Amazon-like buying experience. They want to engage with real people though, right? They don't want to talk with robots. They want to talk with real people. They want seamless experiences, just like we experienced when all of you look at your phone, right? Probably in your top right corner or your left corner or on your home screen, you've got a text messaging app. And if you counted all the other apps that are message-based apps on your phone, they'd probably be around 6 to 7 different types of communication tools, whether that's social media or other ways to engage with friends and family, right? But all of that is to say that it's convenient, it's frictionless, it's efficient, it's an easy way to chat with our friends and our family, but it's not necessarily convenient always to connect with businesses. And I think consumers want that right now. 88%, in fact, are looking for ways to connect with businesses, and they are consulting online resources before making a buying decision. So they're going to search before they find your brand. Part of the other reasons why we need to really invest in making sure that we have convenient experiences to make sure we're collecting reviews. So reducing friction, when we look at the entire customer journey, it's important to analyze your own business and think about the different touch points from discovery all the way to purchase and then to re-engagement. Are you thinking about each stage, and are you thinking about reducing friction? Are you thinking about making things convenient and more efficient? Certainly important right now. So just want to briefly talk about 4 ways to kind of manage those critical customer touch points. First, one recommendation from Podium is to really optimize for increased lead flow. Especially right now when things are moving digital, it's important to think about how you're going to get more web traffic, and once that web traffic lands on your site, how are you going to convert it? 86% of consumers read reviews as part of the buying process. It's important to double down on your reviews. And the interesting thing about reviews, especially Google, Google thinks about it in 4 different ways. And they're going to look at the recency. They're going to look at your review ratings in general. And they're going to look at, I'm looking for my note real quick. The overall search algorithm is going to look at the quality of reviews and the frequency and quantity of reviews that you have. So when you think about your ability to collect reviews, is that an easy process for your customers to leave a positive review for your business? Most people, I think, are compelled to leave a review when they've had a bad experience. And that's mainly because it takes a lot of work to go leave a review. But if you can make that experience super convenient and easy, possibly through a text message, every time someone transacts with your business, right, then you can start to outweigh any negative reviews and really capitalize on positive reviews. And again, consumers are going to read reviews as part of that purchase decision. Building confidence, I think, is also important, right? When you think about 57% of consumers won't use a business that has fewer than 4 stars. So again, back to that quality of the reviews that you have, Google's not really gonna, I think what we're seeing is Google, their algorithm will limit searches that, you know, are under, most people will search for best or near me results. And Google's not going to put anything on there under 4 stars. So it's important to, again, invest in your reviews and then recency. Impact of reputation, what Podium sees is we see an average of 85% increase in clicks to call, 67% increase in web visits, and then also 52% increase in listings views, all based on the positive reputation that you can generate just by frictionless you know, experiences that way by collecting those reviews. And then thinking about efficiently converting your website leads, think about once they maybe find your review and they land on your website, how are you going to keep them on your website and convert them to a new customer? We've seen a lot of our healthcare and also retail customers using web chat tools to be able to have personal conversations with leads once they're on their website and be able to resolve concerns and questions and keep consumers kind of interacting with the business. And even more common, we've seen in the healthcare industry, especially being able to inform patients of new information to kind of deal with COVID questions, especially. And we've also seen that on the retail side and service organizations like auto services being able to kind of handle the influx of questions around maybe hours, business operating hours, or products that are in service, all those things you can handle through web chat versus maybe people calling on your landline. So again, thinking about our preferred channels, what consumers think about, 2 out of 3 consumers prefer to text businesses. Most businesses, especially brick and mortar stores, are set up already. Just part of doing business is having your email and phone and mail already set up, right? But what do consumers prefer? They prefer those same types of interactions that they're having with their friends and family. And we're seeing a major shift in the industry where businesses are starting to adopt more and more channels to communicate with their customers. And then, of course, nurturing leads. The one-on-one consumer experience is super important. I know I get frustrated when I have to deal with a scenario where I'm calling and I have to dial all of my information, my birth date, my social security number, my address, everything. I've got to deal with a robot on the phone, and it takes me 30 minutes to get an answer or to schedule an appointment or to verify myself. I would much rather have a personal conversation over text where I can leave my my computer, where I can maybe run errands and do other things, and it's all happening over text. Especially in the healthcare industry, one thing I noticed 2 weeks ago, I went to a clinic down the road. I had to take my daughter to get tested for strep throat. And of course, we couldn't come into the waiting room, but I was able to back up right in front of the clinic, text them, tell them I was there. They came out, swabbed for my daughter, and then we carried on the conversation all through text afterwards. It was a really interesting way to kind of have that patient experience with a clinic that I go to frequently. So I think text communications is sort of being rapidly adopted in an experience where we have to kind of have touchless interactions with businesses right now. And then finally, payments is something we've also seen as an issue, right? People are hesitant to exchange cash or cards. There's a lot of businesses that aren't able to have consumers in their stores or even in their waiting rooms. And what we've seen is that touchless experience is a real game changer for a lot of businesses and keeping revenue flowing in. When you think about the security of it, right, and how it's sanitary and it's quick, it's easy to collect billing, it's easy to transact with businesses when you've got it done through mobile applications. And I think it's something that a lot of businesses are rapidly considering right now. So ultimately, Podium, we want to help businesses to handle more interactions digitally and win customers for life. I think when you're a saved contact or trusted contact in someone's phone, you can build a personal relationship, and brands can weather the storm when we're looking at the issues and the economic impact that's happening right now with COVID-19. So Podium's interaction management platform, and this is the extent of the pitch, and then we'll get into our panel discussion, but Podium powers every touch point across that customer journey that we talked about, from reviews, web chat, and team chat. Also allows marketing teams and CX teams to be able to interact and resolve concerns as questions are coming in, and then now we can collect payment, right? All through digital applications, all through text-based payment collection. You can collect feedback, reviews, and then re-engage with your customers and patients as well. So we want to power that entire life cycle of the customer journey. Podium works with 40,000 enterprises in the U.S. and also around the world, and a lot of these businesses are weathering the storm. When we look at and some of them are even thriving right now based on the ability to keep relationships and maintain a modern customer experience with their customers. So moving into our panel discussion, I'd love to introduce our panelists. Let's start with Adrienne. She's the former CMO at Cushman and Wakefield. Adrienne, could you tell us a little about yourself?
Hi, thank you very much. Well, little did I know months back when I accepted this invite that we'd be in these unprecedented times. So I hope everybody is safe and healthy. My background's in B2B. I've been involved in technology, commercial real estate. Also have worked for the public sector under Richard M. Daley, and have had just a really interesting and I feel very blessed career path. And I definitely see the world differently at the moment, and I think it'll be great for us to have some very enlightening conversations around COVID and how we're addressing it as family members, as marketers, as professionals, and some of the things that we can get out ahead of.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us today. Keith Jensen, Chief Marketing Officer at WCP Healthcare. Can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for a private equity firm. The firm is called WAD Capital Partners, and we invest in both healthcare businesses and then businesses on the business and technology side. My role is to oversee the marketing for our healthcare businesses. So I work with some very large businesses like Ivy Rehab is a physical therapy group. They've got about 225 locations across the country. And then a gastroenterology group that's got about the same amount, everything all the way down to my smallest one is a veterinary practice that is a startup that has 9 locations. So kind of a diverse portfolio across the healthcare space, even into the pet care space a little bit. And background
That's
is
great.
Mostly in marketing and advertising for healthcare.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us today. Next is Greg Mahoney, Senior Director of Strategy at Elite Dental Partners. Greg, can you tell us a little about yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks, Mark. So Elite Dental Partners is a support organization for dental practices. We have about 110 locations from Minnesota to New Jersey down to Tennessee. My role is to implement strategic initiatives that combine technology and innovation with operations. So whether we're implementing those items or brainstorming those, I get involved with those pieces to make sure that we provide the right support structure for those affiliate locations, as well as improve the operations at those individual locations for patients and employees.
Excellent. And last but not least, Kristin Ward, Chief Data Officer at Yext. Kristin, can you tell us a little about yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Nice to be with you all. Obviously, a very weird world for us. I couldn't say it better than Adrienne. So Yext is the answer company. We focus on empowering natural language search anywhere a question is asked. So we power actually several of the companies I can see here on the gallery view. We power making sure that the data about those businesses, but who would have thought how important that has, yes, it was always important, but now it's like, oh, we're open, we're not open, answering questions related to COVID-19, just a ton of things going on. So very excited to speak with everybody and hopefully add to the conversation.
Excellent. Well, let's dive into our discussion today. First off, let's just talk about COVID-19. I think there's a rapid transition happening for especially marketers, right, and business leaders in general. Even my own team has had to kind of like pause most of our typical strategies and figure out how do we continue to market, how do we continue to engage our customers and keep business moving forward. What have you guys seen? We've got a number of people on the line that are from various industries, right? Some of those are retail, some of those are the finserve, others are healthcare, right? What have you guys seen in terms of businesses that are adapting? What have you seen work well? And maybe some of you within your own businesses, what are you doing to navigate the transition right now? Let's go to you, Adrienne, first.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I don't know if you guys have recently seen this Forbes article that just came out around the CEO of Marriott and the extraordinary messaging and vision that he laid out in a video message recently to all employees, stakeholders, and clients and consumers, and it was fantastic. If you haven't seen it, you should take a look at it. I think some of the pieces that make it so powerful is the vulnerability that the CEO exhibited. He's actually going through cancer, and they were concerned about him getting on the video and showing his bald head. And he was like, "No, I need to do this. That people need to see me. They need to identify with what's occurring." He also got really focused and specific about the changes that the company's going through and the work that they're doing and the impact to their current employees and what the executives are going to do relative to making an impact to COVID so that everybody recognizes that they're all in it together. I think in this time right now, there's probably nothing more powerful than consistent, transparent communication to our employees, to our stakeholders, and to our clients. And whether it's through a variety of channels, video, Zoom, webinar, I mean, all the things we're doing, I don't think we can do it enough, and I don't think we can be any more authentic. And so I'd ask you guys to take a look at that. I sent it off on my LinkedIn. I think you did a really, really strong job, and I think as leaders right now, it's up to us to make sure we're messaging in a really strong and powerful way to eliminate a lot of the ambiguity, the uncertainty that many are feeling at the moment.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. This is Kristin. Something that I've been blown away by, I mentioned in our pre-call, I saw a tweet yesterday and I couldn't help but laugh that said, who's leading digital transformation in your organization? And it was A, the CEO, B, the CIO, or C, COVID-19. And it's so appropriate to what we're seeing. I'm very proud to point out that Yext has almost completely transitioned a huge chunk of our team to power government and agency websites. So we are seeing this massive change in government, universities, and others that are being forced to rethink how do they communicate, to Adrienne's point, how do they send a clear message? And unfortunately, just websites with 1 million links on them from the CDC and everything else are very hard to understand and analyze. So Yext Pro Bono in 48 hours rebuilt the entire state of New Jersey's COVID response platform. And I think, again, I'm speaking to businesses here. You all have the ability to move pretty quickly. Can you imagine a state government completely revamping their entire crisis management system? And they did it because what they realized was people have questions they want answered. and they want transparency, exactly what Adrienne's saying, and they want consistency. And if you go to Google right now and ask questions, you get a million different opinions on what people should be doing. We want them to ask the state, the government, the national agencies. So that has been mind-blowing to me, the red tape of just sort of dissipating. It highlights a great saying of, if your agenda doesn't matter in a crisis, then your agenda doesn't matter. And the reality is we're all seeing that in this amazing ramp up as businesses and as a community.
Absolutely. Keith, what have you seen on your end when you think about adaptation in healthcare?
Well, certainly I'd like to talk a little bit about telehealth, but on this point of messaging, I think what's really, it's like, yes, you want to make sure that your message is clear on the website. You want to make sure you got a good landing page, something that will answer the questions quickly, is not too much information. I actually found that, normally when we create video content, we're going and we're doing like really professional, video shoots. I found that now it's actually it's very liberating. We could hop on somebody with Zoom, videotape it there, and people are fine, seeing that low quality, because they're like, oh, they're staying at home, good for them. So I actually think there's kind of something, it's a good time now. If you've ever been scared of video content in the past, don't be. Just make it through, whatever tools you have, and throw it up there, because seeing people's faces in this time is just really important. But in another sense of messaging of yes, it needs to be concise on the website and all that, but a lot of the companies that I work with, I've been pushing for a long time to say it is so critical that you have a system in place where you can do highly targeted segmentation to be able to send messages to people, but only the right people. And some groups listen and they say, that's a great idea, let's put it in place. And it takes a while to put it in place, but once it's in, it's in. And the groups that did not listen and didn't put it in place are kicking themselves right now, because I've got some of my companies that can literally say, uh-oh, we had somebody test positive for COVID-19 that came in on this day. What do we do? Okay, let's go through and segment a list of all the patients that were in that day and any other time that they were been in, and also segment anybody that's been in other days that those patients were in, and let's send them a message and let them know. Right? And the groups, or send an email that says, hey, for anybody who does not have an upcoming appointment, but has had an appointment within X amount of days, let's send this message to let them know that we are still here for them and open, and here's what our policy is. So I think right now, if there's anybody out there who has not been able to push that kind of agenda through, of putting some kind of, I don't know if you want to call it a CRM or a third-party system in place that integrates with some kind of practice management or CRM that you have, that would allow for that highly segmented listing and emails and texts, now's the time to lobby for that, because your CEO and everybody will listen, because if you don't have it in place, I'm sure they want it.
Absolutely. I think, backing up to Kristin brought up a tweet that I think I saw the same tweet. We're thinking about digital transformation, and, businesses are being forced to really think about digital transformation maybe faster than normal, right? Greg, tell us a little bit about what's going on with Elite Dental, and tell us some of the solutions you have in place, or some of the things you're doing to kind of route around some of that.
Sure. So we are also coming late to the telemedicine, teledentistry party. The products in dentistry and the solutions you can offer in telemedicine and dentistry are not very comprehensive right now. And I think everybody kind of feels that, because every physician and doctor out there would rather see the patient face to face. But dentistry has traditionally been, and will always will be, a very mechanical type of medicine, where most everything is surgery or restoration, and so you're limited in some ways to provide some medication or some advice to patients. But there are some emerging tools around imaging, just like extraoral or intraoral images, to pass those to the provider so that you can take a picture of a tooth that has trauma or something like that. But we're also using tools to communicate with our patients in the same way that Keith had mentioned. We need to make sure that we're communicating to the patients very quickly on what's happening and what services they can count on us for. Virtually every state at this point has limited dental services to emergent care only. And so what does that mean for patients? Is it trauma? Is it extreme pain? Is there uncontrollable bleeding? Something like that they need to that needs attention. And so great, you can go to the dentist. But outside of that, nothing else is permitted. So how do we communicate that with our patients? And so we're using text messaging and targeting those very, very specifically, whether by practice and specific days that they have been in, or they will be in the next couple weeks, and what messaging we need to do, kind of provide for them so that we don't put them in harm's way or even our providers in harm's way.
Very interesting. Have you seen, positive responses when you think about messaging or, texting? Does that seem to be a faster solution than perhaps waiting on the phone lines and things like that?
Especially in these times where we're seeing only emergent patients, we've had to reduce the staff members at our offices quite significantly in order to make it through this time. And everybody is hurting in that same way, or they're completely overloaded like hospitals. It's, there's a mix. But in order, for all of those patients that would be in some of our, maybe average or even larger practices, there may be 60, 70 patients that need to have phone calls if that were the method that we were following, and that would be each day. And so we've taken to using text messaging, and we're using the Podium platform in order to do that now, just because it's so instantaneous. We're bulk uploading some of these messages, and it's the promised time to deliver is within 30 minutes, and I'm seeing inside the platform responses come back. Some people are like, oh, thanks, or whatever, and some people are like, well, yeah, of course, like, why, of course this is the thing, why are you telling me now? Yeah, and the idea is, well, everybody has their own expectations for the messages, and we all know those, and there are some people who are annoying, and it's just like, why are you sending me this? Like, who cares? I'm like, yeah, well, there's still people who are denying that COVID-19 is a crisis, and unfortunately some of those are they're going to come up in those messages, but we haven't heard anybody like, oh, this is the wrong message or anything. They've really liked to see that and respond readily, like, oh, thank you, or something like that. Where we have also sent emails at the same time, and we look at their open rates, and they're just not very high. And traditionally, email doesn't have fantastic open rates unless somebody knew that email was coming, was expecting it, it was part of a process they were already involved in. So for this way, when we want to make sure that somebody reads something, we're going to text it to them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We have a bit of a joke around a Podium where we'd say, hey, text, if this is a text to your grandma, she would open it, right? But if it was an email, she'd forget about it. So let's talk about customer acquisition a little bit, because you mentioned that. I think that's top of mind for a lot of marketers and business leaders in general. How do we make sure we still have new customers coming in, we're still selling more product, right? Or we're still providing the service and care that we need to if you're on a service-oriented business. What are the things, the channels that marketers should be thinking about? And then, specifically within search marketing, what are the top performing tactics we should be thinking about as well? Adrienne, any thoughts there? And then I'll go to Kristin.
You know what? I just jumped off to take a quick call. Can you skip me and I'll come back?
Absolutely. So we're talking about
so much.
new tactics,
multitasking.
New channels. Yeah, no worries. New tactics, new channels, and search marketing. Kristin, what are your thoughts?
So, I look, this is a tough time here in the state of New Jersey. There's a list of essential businesses, which many of you, wherever you are, if you don't have that yet, it's about to hit you as well, which is certain things are quote unquote essential and certain aren't. for the most part right now, client acquisition is about really conveying what you can and cannot do in a very clear manner to your clients. That obviously includes making sure, they can find the information about you. If you're not doing things around structuring the data on your website pages, Mark, you actually talked a little bit about this, which is, look, this is a tough time. It's not going to be easy for anybody. Taking a step back and sort of reevaluating how you do things and what you could maybe improve at this time is really critical. So when I think about channels, or what are the channels that are both working now or could work in the future, I absolutely think text is a no-brainer. I believe that not just because Podium's our partner, I really love you guys, but it's because it's a dialogue, right? Having a dialogue with people at this time is absolutely critical. Look at how many of us are allowing video in our homes. Like literally, I'm in a closet right now. I'm in a closet. This is my wife's closet. Like, this is the world we live in, and it's the only quiet room in my house, right? We're all experiencing things that are completely different than we would have in the past. And I think what's fascinating about it is we're inviting people into these experiences, and text is another way to be very personal. From the Yext side, I mean, I think we've signed up dozens of people to try natural language search, because there's this handoff, right? Which is, if I ask questions of you, your brand, are you open now? Is one of the funniest ones, are liquor stores considered essential? We're getting that a ton, right? So there's all these elements of how do you piece that together, and where's the handoff to where a human steps in via the chat window to engage further. And so we're trying to help keep the call centers at hospitals and at the state governments and the testing facilities down to a minimum by helping people assess symptoms. But then we're also want to hand it off at some point. And for a business, that's where I think text comes together with it. So, there's going to be a lot of questions online. I think we are all going through a time now where, it's kind of annoying if you're a brand where someone asks a question about your brand and on Google, and there's 90 other people stealing that traffic from you. I get that. It's frustrating. But in these times, people are realizing that that's not the experience they want. So not saying don't advertise via search. I think it's critical right now, but get the basics right as well, which is when they land on your website or they engage via chat, have a solution ready that is going to help them not bounce back and get misinformation. Because I think that's the biggest thing that we're all seeing in now perfect light, that sometimes maybe goes to the back of the queue in normal times. People are realizing now, holy cow, how can I let this conversation not be much more direct between us and our customer? And why do I let all this other crap in to interfere? So that's our main focus with everyone we're working on right now.
Absolutely.
Mark, can I jump in there for a second?
Yeah, please.
So one of the items that Kristin had mentioned was getting that feedback and having a conversation with customers. And that's where we've implemented like net promoter score, and the possibility of having just free form text feedback from our patients and even from our employees. And that has really helped us, because as we're trying to create messaging for the future, as well as create that patient experience or a workflow inside an office or organizationally, having that insight from the end user, good or bad, really helps. And at first, some of our executive team was like, well, wait a second. What are we just gonna, we'll just take the bad stuff and then we'll fix it? And I said, no, we're going to take the good things that people say and we're going to expound upon them. We're going to thank our employees for that, or thank our customers for providing that insight, because it's not just correcting the things that we didn't do right. It's also about continuing to expand on the stuff that we are doing well. And so I think that maybe I see that Robin had asked a question about navigating with stakeholders when there are different thoughts on how communication should be sent or crafted or sent. Really thinking about it as what is the perspective of the consumer? if we're not here for that end user, what are we here for? And kind of building it up from that perspective and on an encounter level, building those items up in order to craft those messages. Hopefully that helps reduce some of that friction. There'll always be friction for sure, but can't always avoid it.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about
Mark, about the one
Go ahead.
more thing on the search.
Yeah.
If it's probably a time where everyone, if you did search before, like paid search, you might be pulling back, and so they might be saying, hey, do we need to spend this money? And I've gotten a lot of that at the groups I work with. Some of them are spending a couple $100,000 a month on search, and some of them are only a couple $100 a month. But I think the most important thing and the best thing that the marketing teams that have this in place are able to do is look at the data. So if you're doing search and all you're getting from your search partner is like, this is how many impressions you got and how many clicks, you should fire that search partner immediately, or take the action upon yourself to put more granular metrics in place where you can track better. So for instance, with our groups, every phone call, the way we do it is we have a phone tracking system called Call Tracking Metrics. You use CallRail, or there's a bunch of other ones out there. We have an individual phone line that is tied to Google Analytics for every single one of our centers. Google Ads for every one of our centers. If somebody comes into our website through a click, it's got a UTM parameter. It does dynamic number insertion, so the phone number changes, and we record that call. And so when someone comes back, a COO or anyone comes back and says, hey, we should cut down on our ad spend, we go, okay, well, let's first go in and see how many calls we got and how long they were on average, and let's listen to them and let's see exactly what we will be missing if we drop down on this ad spend. And when you can actually quantify that we got 57 calls that were over 8 minutes off a $500 ad spend, there is absolutely no way they're going to cut that budget, right? Because they're going to see a direct correlation. So I think that now is the time, whether your ad spend is high or low, if you don't have that granularity of tracking in place, put it in place, because it is the only way you're going to be able to lobby for those marketing dollars to keep the things up that are going to drive the new business coming in.
I'm going to jump on that bandwagon, if you don't mind, Mark. Keith, I could not agree more with you. At the end of the day, the only way to substantiate whether we're really truly driving that client experience is through our analytics and our metrics. And I do think sometimes we get buried into that, right? And we take a look at some of the impressions and the unique visits, et cetera, but we can't translate that into true return on investment. I sit on the board of Hootsuite. I'm a part of their client advisory board. And I think what we developed at Cushman was really a lead score that would come off of what we did in social, right? Everyone wants to be on social. The question is, what channels are really effective and what is driving not just the brand awareness, but as Kristin and Greg talked about, the engagement, the dialogue that occurs between us and our clients, which is the critical component to their level of satisfaction with us and their overall experience. So I would encourage many of you who are already involved to really be able to boil down your analytics to a core dashboard of things that are critically important to what that is doing in generating business and revenue to the bottom line. Without it, to Keith's point, it's a whole bunch of effort and a lot of spend and not a lot of results.
Absolutely. I love that, especially doubling down on the notion of engagement, right? Like there's in the B2B side, there's always a joke about MQLs as a vanity metric. If you're a marketer in B2B, it really, what matters, I think, more is how many touch points are they experiencing, and are they re-engaging with your content or re-engaging with your brand, transacting, all those things, outside of just, an impression. They saw an ad or they clicked on something. That doesn't mean a whole lot unless there's actually follow through, right? Cool. Well, let's transition maybe away from customer acquisition to talk a little bit more about the issue we're seeing most often in these service-oriented businesses and even kind of retail side of things is the issue around transactions, right? I think there are still, if you're not an e-commerce business already set up for digital transactions and shipping, how do you deal with that as a brick and mortar store? What have you guys seen that maybe on the healthcare side? What have you seen on the retail side? What are some examples of businesses that are doing well with maybe digital payments and things like that? Any thoughts there, Kristin? We'll go to you first.
You know I always have thoughts, Mark. So obviously working with a lot of our customers, especially in the SMB world, like literally we just put an order here in our own home, oddly enough, for liquor to be delivered. We all need to get by somehow, but they couldn't take, or they couldn't add a tip because they're still not e-com ready. And it's kind of fascinating how many businesses are not ready for that. This is part of a chain, but it's a relatively small local chain. I think not having those capabilities right now could be a phenomenal way for many service providers to extend their ability to help small businesses and other. One of the key ways that we've seen that is we started working with a lot of our clients and our partners to push throughout, as you know, not everybody may know, Yext has an API that goes out to, over 100 different platforms like Google, Bing, Tencent, Alibaba, it doesn't matter. But some of the abilities is we have these links that you can say, help us get through this, buy a gift card. And so we started really reaching out to all of these business owners saying, look, there are a lot of local businesses that really could use the help. Come in 8 months and have a great dinner and they'll give them a discount. But it was just a smart way. How could we get them funding now? The problem is they can't take transactions that way. They're not set up for it. So we did a huge outreach, all of our sales engineers reaching out, all of our sales or account executives. And the amount that just were like, we have no way to do this right now. And so we started porting them to you and other people, but it does amaze me that, this is a critical piece of almost every business's infrastructure. And what they'll find is if they take the plunge on it, which it's usually not very cost prohibitive, but if they start, it offers up all these new ways to handle these types of situations. Because I know even in our grocery store, they're hoping that most people can use touchless credit transactions. And they're just not really designed that way. I don't know if people have been watching. I stay very closely connected to everything coming out of China, but the amount of transactional, they've always had it with WeChat. Obviously, it's one major platform, but you don't touch anything when you buy something in China. For those of you who have been there, it's you walk up, you just use you get close and it goes. That's actually critical right now. Who would have thought? But it's absolutely critical. And I think having these digitally transaction engines tied into these businesses, if they're not doing it now or you're not doing it now, I highly recommend you take a look at it. And then once you have that, a platform like ours can help you get that word out. And we know it's working from some of the businesses have gotten back to us, said, hey, that's a great idea. It gives us cash. And we know maybe they redeem it, maybe they don't. But if you love your local business and your local service provider, it's a great way to help them out right now.
Absolutely. It's been interesting, and especially if you're a marketer, it's a real opportunity to be the hero of your business, to figure out a way to do rapid kind of digital payment collection, right? And what's been cool that I've seen at Podium, in Utah, we rolled out a program called Text to Takeout because we really were concerned about local restaurants, right? And so we gave away this platform for free. We allowed local restaurants to be able to kind of communicate with their customers, for people to text a business, right, or text a restaurant, send in their order, and then collect payment all through a text message conversation instead of any other kind of like scenario where they have to come inside the restaurant, which in many cases is sort of banned. But we were concerned because there was a significant drop off of local restaurants in their revenue, right? And we've seen a nice uptick based on digital payments and communication with customers and helping to support our local restaurants. But I think the same is true for any other B2C industry. If you're not e-commerce ready, right? If you're in healthcare, especially, to be able to reduce the billing cycle. We've talked to so many healthcare practices that are still sending out bills in the mail, which take an average of maybe 90 days to 180 days to collect on, where, if you can send out a quick text message, you could probably collect on that a lot faster. Let's move to, I think we probably have about 10 minutes left, Stephanie. Something about that?
Yes. So we do have 2 questions that have been submitted.
Okay.
Want to make sure we address that and then leave at least maybe 10, 15 minutes on the back end for us to break out into groups. That'll be great.
Cool. Now's a great time to submit your questions. I do have 1,000 other thoughts I want to kind of talk about around consumer experience, but I'm actually more interested in the questions from our audience today. One question from Ashley, she's at Ecolab. What do you guys think will happen once this is over, when we think about COVID? The hope is that, going into the summer, we're all kind of back in our businesses, back in our offices, and things are running well. Do you guys think that practices are being developed now that will be sustainable in the long term, or is this a short-term solution? Greg, what do you think about that?
So I think that it'll be a little bit mixed. I think that there'll be some forced changes that take place now, and an overall restructuring that'll take place. So they might get by with a free product now, or take advantage of something, even like many people have been taking advantage of Zoom, and then they'll after this starts to dwindle down, and we're not seeing as much activity around it. We'll start to see people restructure their organizations for a way that much more involves the technology that became so important during this. So whether it's conversations like these and kind of restructuring how valuable they really can be, and even questioning, well, do we really need to do that face-to-face, or can we have a video chat and accomplish certain things? But then I think that we're probably going to see a lot more feedback into these digital methods of interaction, like this, or even in payments. We're in the dental world right now. It has for a very long time been a mom and pop industry, and there's a lot of investment coming into it right now. And so even as we speak, we're having internal conversations around what are we going to do in terms of electronic bill pay for our patients, and instituting something that can connect with our patient management systems, that patients find easy to use, and that we can actually post easy on the back end to reconcile those bank accounts and others. And so we're starting to look now, but I think that we'll see people, the adoption curve is going to turn up significantly after this crisis.
Absolutely. Keith, any thoughts for Ashley here when we think about short-term versus long-term strategies?
Yeah, I agree with Greg about, I think there's going to be a lot of companies that realize we don't need everyone in the office. We should cut down on our office space, and we should save some money there. And I think it's going to push a little bit of a work from home movement, I think. And I also think there's going to be a lot of employees that are not super excited about going back to the office because they can get more done in a lot of cases when they're home. As far as I think the interesting thing about this in terms of the offerings that I think every company's kind of pivoting in terms of, it's not business as usual. We don't have the same revenue streams as we did before. What can we do to capture those again and to supplement them? And I think that there's going to be a lot of interesting insights that come about, like in the healthcare space. Telehealth is huge now. And I have been on, I can't tell you how many board meeting calls I've been on talking about telehealth and thinking through the strategy and picking the partners and then worrying about compliance and HIPAA and all this stuff. And I mean, it's been a year at least for one of my companies that we have been discussing telehealth, and there's been a whole committee around it. And we launched it in 4 days, when we finally had, with none of the insight that we gained from those meetings that we'd have, quarterly or whatever before this. We just said, we have to launch this as quickly as possible. Let's figure it out. Let's pick a partner. Let's get the app branded. Let's train our team. Let's create videos, and let's get it done. And we did it. And now we don't know if we're going to get reimbursed. We know that it's HIPAA compliant. We don't know if we're going to get reimbursed fully or halfway, whatever, but we know that it's the right thing to do for patients. In the physical therapy space, especially, people have pain and they have a hard time walking. And if they were to just sit at home on the couch for a couple weeks or months and not get up and do those exercises, they would surely not be in as good of a spot as they would be if they had done it. So that telehealth option has been really helpful. And I do think that is going to prove out to be a really interesting way of capturing the people that even after this whole thing is done, imagine someone says, oh, I can't make it in today to my physical therapy appointment. Okay, no problem. What time are you going to be home? We'll do a telehealth visit. There should be really no reason why anybody misses any appointments. So I think that no matter what industry you're in, the pivots that you're doing right now are actually could actually be a completely new revenue stream for you, and something that you put more weight on later. And you may not have ever even gotten around to it if COVID-19 hadn't forced you into it.
Absolutely. We had another question here from Robin, asking around kind of tips to navigate, when stakeholders don't agree with kind of moving forward with messaging. And I'll take this first, and then route to you guys as well. My thought is this: like, not everyone's going to be pumped on text messaging with a business, right? The real question is, how many leads or interactions are you letting slip through the cracks by not having kind of chat and messaging enabled, right? The typical consumer uses maybe 9 different applications, whether that's Marco Polo, Facebook Messenger, right? Apple Business Chat is becoming more popular, right? And so, is there a segment of your customer base that is kind of slipping through by not having messaging as an available channel versus email and phone calls? I think that's the way I would kind of think about that. Any thoughts there, Kristin, Greg, Adrienne?
Yeah, I think I was just going to address Robin's question, because I think she was asking something a little bit different, which is what happens when stakeholders don't agree around the messaging that goes out.
Okay.
She's nodding. You got it, Adrienne.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And here's what I'd say. I think the critical component to that is to get those stakeholders or those senior leaders in a room, right? Outline the objective. What is it that this message is going to accomplish? So at the end, when we get this out and we've been able to do it, what will we benefit from? So make sure everybody's in agreement, Robin, on the objective, and then begin to work through the tactics to get there. Because messaging is unique, right? It's like art is in the eye of the beholder. And everyone has a different way they'd want to approach it. So don't get focused on the delivery of it, and get more focused upfront on the content. And try to take that approach as very methodical, not emotional, right? And use proof points with your stakeholders to ensure that they see the benefit of why a message needs to be stated in a certain way relative to the importance of what it's going to accomplish. But you're not alone. Many have those issues. And so I just encourage you to continue to focus on getting everybody around the table and in a room with a set state of objectives. It's pretty important.
And I completely agree. I think what's fascinating is to sort of link Mark and Adrienne's comments both, which is messaging has different audiences. When it's the full audience, getting the message in agreement can be very difficult at times like this. But then individual one-to-one discussions via text or other might be another way to have different messages at the top and then personal conversations at the bottom. Mm-hmm. So there's different levels of the message. And I can't not run at the last question, which is what is going to change existentially? Okay, who's ready for straight to streaming? Okay. Straight to streaming is definitely got a shot to happen. Movie theaters, I think it's going to be over. Commercial real estate, to Keith's point or to Greg's point, I think absolutely very likely to take a huge hit. Telehealth, I think we've covered is definitely happening. How about business travel, everybody? Every CFO in the world has been dreaming about an A/B test where they don't travel for 6 months and see if they can still grow the business. So congratulations, you got your A/B test on business travel, because that's going to happen. And then trying to think of one of the others. Retail, I think retail is going to be amazing to see what happens. The engagement in retail and many others is going to be sort of, can we fulfill and have a great customer dialogue electronically? And last, I would say education. I mean, what we're seeing right now by the 2,000 middle colleges that, look, MIT is going to be fine, Harvard's going to be fine, Stanford's going to be fine. But all the middle colleges that are now being forced that you don't have to pay $80,000 for a liberal arts education, this is an existential threat to how that continues. And don't get me wrong, I think there's benefits to both, but that's definitely the areas I see. Sorry, I had to say it.
Yeah,
That's great.
and I just want to add one quick comment to Kristin, because I loved you jumping out of that. I think the sobering message here is, if anybody believes that we're going to go back to where we've been 2 weeks, a month ago, it's not going to happen. So the real recognition is that for those that were dabbling with virtual and remote, and obviously we did a lot of that, Cushman and Wakefield, we did a ton of analysis of how many actually sit in an office, work studies, etc. But I think that the real mentality is that the new normal is going to be people having access to a PDA or a desktop to get almost everything that they can do delivered without a face-to-face outside of Zoom. So I think if you're not preparing your businesses to get to this new state of retail e-commerce and virtual meetings, you're going to miss the window. I've seen already commercials that are hitting with Hyundai and a variety, Peloton, and a variety of folks that are jumping on this opportunity because they were prepped and primed and ready. So I would encourage you to really be building out your digital transformation plan if it's not in place now, because it's here to stay.
Love it.
Totally agree.
I love it. Well, you guys unofficially started our lightning round, so I'm going to move to Greg and Keith next on what's your one key takeaway that you give to the rest of the audience here before we kind of transition back to Stephanie. Greg, you first. One key takeaway.
Build your communications from and how you structure your organization and its marketing efforts from the individual customer encounter. Whether that's a transaction on the internet, if it is the signing of documents in real estate, if it is healthcare, be focused on that piece and what leads to it and what follows after it. If you can create an immersive experience for all of those customers that is equal in quality before, during, and after, they will keep coming back to you. There was a race to the bottom in price for so long, and there's only so far that everyone can go. And so now is the race to who can provide the best experience. Prices will be menu based and everything will be there, just like buying something on Amazon and seeing all of those items there. But what sets those items apart? It's the experience in the buying, it's how fast it was delivered, and it's the quality that lasted after the purchase and their feedback. So keep that in mind.
That's great. Keith, last thought.
I appreciate it. I do have a hard stop, so I'm going to jump off after this. But my last thought would be, take this opportunity to think through the things that you always wanted to, your wish list items that you always wanted to put in place, and make a business case for them, especially if you can test them. So one example, like I was with one of my groups, I would listen to phone calls that would come in. It was our veterinary practice, and the phone calls would go directly to each center, and I would listen to them, and I would want to smash my head into the wall because we weren't handling them correctly, or we weren't saying things the right way, or it was driving us. And I'd say, we need a centralized call center. And they would always push back. That's not our customer service. We want everyone calling the center. And I just knew if I could have one or two people that were trained really well, centralized, we could convert way more. And so I said, as we had to start doing furloughs, I said, guys, I'm going to put my best person on a phone. I'm going to make a makeshift call center, route in through our call tracking metric system, and we're going to see what the conversion rate is like. We did it for 3 days, and we improved conversions by 70%. Wow. I mean, it was a no-brainer. And then after that, now we have 5 people on a call center. We actually hired people. We got more staff out of this because I had the opportunity to push this test through. So point of it all is, like, if there are things, an email system, a text message, or whatever it is, if there are things that were on your wish list that you were having a hard time getting through, try to make the business case for them now.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Keith, and thank you to all of our panelists for kind of engaging with us today, and everyone else on the line.